Our conversation with Congressman Scott DesJarlais begins. Congressman, thanks for joining us on Nashville's Morning News. I want to play some audio for you. Of course, one of the biggest news stories today, we have the ceasefire is now over, and Israel is going after Hamas as they should. Yet again, of course, Congressman, as you know, they decided, Hamas did, to break the ceasefire couple of different times, and now Israel has the opportunity to defend themselves once again. John, I need some audio. I wanted to play this for you. Just get your reaction. This is Secretary of State Antony Blinken warning Israel that they better do this the right way.
The way Israel defends itself matters. It's imperative that Israel act in accordance with international humanitarian law and the laws of war, even when confronting a terrorist group that respects neither. In my meetings today with the Prime Minister and senior Israeli officials, I made clear that before Israel resumes major military operations, it must put in place humanitarian civilian protection plans that minimize further casualties of innocent Palestinians.
I mean, Congressman, I got to ask this question. How is Israel supposed to do that? It sounds like the Secretary of State is telling Israel to fight with one hand behind its back.
Yeah, that's a pretty arrogant statement on his part to tell a country that's being attacked and continuing to be attacked by a terrorist group. And frankly, I think that there's probably been no country that's tried to be more surgical. When they attack certain places, they take videos, they have evidence to show why the other day they shot an ambulance because they saw Hamas terrorists had gotten into it. And, they get blamed for bombing a hospital, that Rashida Tlaib up here goes and basically creates an insurrection in the Cannon building over. So I think Israel does a phenomenal job. And Gaza is very complicated. I feel for Palestinian civilians that are trying to get out, that are caught in the war, but I've not heard a lot of people talk about how many of the Palestinians in Gaza are pro-Hamas or anti-Hamas. And I have sources on the ground that show, well over half of the people there are supportive of Hamas. So when you're trying to, be surgical and go into areas where your enemy is, and the civilians are supporting your enemy, then they become your enemy. So for Blinken to go in there and try to school them was, again, it's arrogant, and I'd like to think how we would react if another country told us how we should behave when we're conducting our military operations.
Well, and also part of this statement, I'll spare you. You're welcome. The rest of the sanctimony from the Secretary of State, but he also talks about how Israel needs to make sure that they don't blow up any necessary infrastructure within Gaza, just completely ignoring the fact that at least half the missiles there from Hamas end up not even making it to Israel and end up landing back in to Gaza, and they destroy their own hospitals and they destroy their own schools. And I don't see the Secretary of State telling Hamas, hey, make sure your rockets are working.
Yeah, it seems like they're more concerned about the public opinion of the protesters. That happens a lot in this country, whoever protests the loudest. And, who's paying for all these protests? We had a group in the Capitol here a week or two ago that said Veterans for Ceasefire. And I guarantee most of these kids wearing these black T-shirts had never even held a gun and had never been in the military. But they're known up here to have protests where they'll pull people out of their day jobs and come and have them fight for a cause. And so I've seen it up here, and we see it all around the country. And that seems to be who the Biden administration listens to, is who's screaming the loudest, not paying attention to the actual situation on the ground in Israel and what's happening there. We saw, Hamas gunmen get out and kill 3 Israelis and injure, 11 more just yesterday during this alleged ceasefire. So Hamas is not much different than ISIS. And, again, we don't exactly know the makeup of the support for or against Hamas in Palestine. I'd like to hear better numbers, but from what I'm hearing, it's there's certainly innocent people involved, and I think Israel takes great steps to protect them and warn them and tell them to leave. We know Hamas uses them as human shields. That's their MO. and they use hospitals and daycares and things like that. So Israel works really hard to try to let innocent people get out of the way, and in the meantime protect their little slim piece of property they have there in the Middle East.
Congressman Scott DesJarlais joining us on Nashville's Morning News. Everyone's, of course, talking about, I'm sure D.C. is buzzing about the debate last night between Gavin Newsom and Ron DeSantis, California versus Florida. I don't know. I've been playing audio all morning long. Did you see it? What did you think? And what is the overarching opinion of folks you've encountered in Washington, D.C. this morning?
Well, I had not talked to anybody in D.C. about it this morning. And if I'm going to be 100% honest, I can tell you a lot more about the Seahawks-Cowboys game than I could the DeSantis-Newsom matchup. Because it was a heck of a lot more interesting. I thought it was fairly predictable. I would go back and forth, and it seemed kind of a made-for-TV special. There's certainly a huge contrast between the two states and the way they're run. And I was like you. I thought that there was some missed opportunities. They're both pretty skilled debaters. They came in there armed with all kinds of insults. And, you can't help but think that it's some type of an audition for Gavin Newsom when and if the Democratic Party decides to jettison Joe Biden, which I think they want to do. So, he repeatedly said he's not going to be the nominee. But I don't think that type of an event or debate would have happened on Fox News if Newsom wasn't auditioning for something. DeSantis, he had some great points. He missed some opportunities. I agree on COVID and where he should have asked what Newsom talked to President Xi about. So, there were some good shots fired back and forth. I think DeSantis probably handled my point of view better, and Newsom was a little bit delusional.
7:45 on Nashville's Morning News. Congressman, stay right there. Got to check the wet roadways here in Nashville from the Paul Winkler Investment WTN Traffic Center. Rain this morning, ending this afternoon, a high of 62. Showers on Saturday, partly cloudy on Sunday. Highs near 60. And right now, 48 degrees at Super Talk 99.7. We have Congressman Scott DesJarlais joining us on the Newsmaker Hotline. Congressman, a few other things that are out there. Let me ask you, the conversation regarding the impeachment of one Alejandro Mayorkas, Marjorie Taylor Greene. She had this all teed up, ready to go. She had a conversation with Speaker Mike Johnson and called off the impeachment vote. Is there not enough, as far as you can tell, is there not enough folks that believe that Mayorkas should be impeached?
Well, I was walking to the floor to vote last night thinking we were going to have that vote, and somebody had said that she had pulled it the last minute. And, of course, we had voted on this the week before Thanksgiving, and 8 Republicans joined with Democrats to block it. I think if anybody, there's so many people here you could focus on impeachment. This guy should just plain be fired or should quit or whatever. But I think that she had reached some kind of deal with the Homeland Security Committee. You might want to have Mark Green on. He probably knows more about this than I do. That they're going to refer this to the committee and begin some type of impeachment inquiry through the committee, which, I guess that's probably the more appropriate way to handle it. But, I don't know if the outcome would have been different. She filed it as a privilege resolution, so it has to come to the floor in 2 days and has to come to a vote. And I didn't know if she'd gotten to some of the people that had voted against it and were getting them to flip or didn't or whatever happened. But at any rate, we did focus on the George Santos, and I don't know if that's news to anybody outside of New York, but expulsion of a member of Congress is kind of a big deal, and we may or may not vote on that this morning, but it was referred for a vote last night, and so that'll be happening here probably in an hour or two.
Yeah, it's interesting. I spoke with Congressman Mark Green, I think it was yesterday or the day before, whenever it was, but he said that he was undecided on where he was going to fall on that vote. There was a really damning ethics report that came out on George Santos. And so if there's a vote this morning, and it is big news, which way are you going to fall?
Honestly, I've looked at this and I've studied it and I've seen who's been expelled from Congress. There's been two since the Civil War. They were both convicted of federal crimes. Santos, no doubt, when he came in here, he basically admittedly had perjurized himself on his credentials. It sounds like he's got himself in a mess in terms of federal finance issues. The FEC monitors, our campaign spending. Sounds like there's issues with him there, but he's not been convicted. So I don't know that it's my job as a member of Congress to convict him. And it seems like there's some questions about how the Ethics Committee conducted the investigation, whether it was kind of weaponized or they've sped up the process. I'm inclined to vote no. It sounds like there may be the votes to expel him, but I think that he probably deserves his day in court. And most of the other members that have left Congress since I've been here that ended up in jail for finance violations, the appropriate agencies got the job done, and they found fault or crime in what they did, and they were punished for it. So it's just kind of an odd place for us to be in. I think I'm probably going to vote not to expel him. I'm guessing I'll have some company, but he needs about 140 to save him today, and I don't know if there's that many that feel the way I do. I think several in Tennessee will probably vote not to expel him, but we'll see.
Speaker Mike Johnson, it's been several weeks now. I guess he had a big lunch or something with folks over there in the Senate, and he's imploring the Democrat-run Senate to, if there's going to be funding for Ukraine, we also need to have more progress on our southern border. And I know that probably fell on deaf ears on the other side of the chamber, if you will, on the other side of the Capitol. How do you feel like Mike Johnson is doing? There's been a lot of discussion as to whether or not people think, he's either brilliant or he's blowing it. What say you?
Well, I think it's 4 against 1. Basically, he's fighting against Hakeem Jeffries in the House, Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell in the Senate, and Joe Biden in the White House. So he's in a tough spot, and I don't care if it was Jim Jordan, whether it's Mike Johnson, or whether it was still Kevin McCarthy, they're in a tough spot. But the southern border is a winning issue. Even in the blue states, in the blue cities, the sanctuary cities, everybody is overrun by this, and they keep wanting to throw the comprehensive immigration reform, but they need relief now, and it's an issue that it's a hill we should die on right now, so to speak. So I think Mike Johnson needs to stay tough, and any kind of funding for Israel or any funding moving forward has to have border security funding in it. It is literally destroying our country in so many different ways. And so I think Mike Johnson is a good guy. I didn't have a problem voting for him. He's put in a very difficult spot. But I think people are going to find out if they're expecting some miracle because a more conservative speaker got in there, they're going to be sorely disappointed. But we need to really rally behind him, force the Senate to tell the American people that the southern border is just not that important. The fentanyl deaths are not that important. The terrorists coming in are not that important. The 7 million people that have entered our country that we don't really know how to take care of are not that important. It's a winning issue for Republicans, and it should be for all Americans. You cannot have a country without a border, and that's basically the way we're operating right now. And Mayorkas needs to go. We need to hang this around Biden's neck, and it's the right thing to do. It shouldn't even be a political bipartisan issue. I mean, it's really the issue of our time. We're worrying about Russia, Ukraine. We're worrying about Israel. And right now we're being invaded and on our own southern border, and we're just looking the other way.
Well, and you're right. I mean, you put it in a very specific political vein. It is a winning issue for Republicans. I mean, all you have to do is look at the polling. Unfortunately for America, it's a losing issue for America because I don't see this being fixed anytime soon. My opinion on this is well known on this program. One of the things that bothers me, and Gavin Newsom said this last night, where he'll come out and he'll say, well, President Biden has, introduced, all this immigration reform and all these things to protect the southern border. And Joe Biden has done exactly the opposite of that. Now, the Republicans in the Senate, as you know, I should say in the House, you guys did have your immigration bill that came out. And of course, nobody wants to look at that on the other side of the chamber. But, for me, the Republicans have done what needs to be done on the southern border, but the Democrats don't want to look at that. All Biden wants to do is have these more agents to process people in, but not to actually protect the border.
Yeah, and HR 2 was our bill. It was a good, comprehensive bill, and I didn't expect them to take all of it, but they need to take some of it. And the more crime we're going to see in cities, we're going into the winter months. They're trying to build shelters for people. It's literally the population of the state of Tennessee has been dispersed around the country in terms of illegals that have entered that we know of, and it's just continuing to get worse because nothing has been done to stop it. And I promise it can be stopped if they want to. I'm all for sending the National Guard, the military, whatever we need to do to secure the border needs to be done as soon as possible. We can talk about how we change our immigration system, but we can't do it till we stop at the flow of people in, and they've just got a green light to head this way, and they're going to be continuing to do it until strict action and firm action is taken.